Hello, and welcome to the Dappercast guide on variation. Now, variation is a very short topic, and I'm sure you'll do fine in it, and it's just a few easy marks, but it's good to know the stuff that goes on in it. Now, the first thing you need to know in variation is sampling, and sampling is basically where you choose a few individuals from a whole population, and you assume these are representative of the whole species. And this stops you from having to test every single member of that species, and it just cuts down a lot of time and costs. Now, there are a few problems when it comes to sampling, and the first of these is sampling bias. Sampling bias can occur through vested interests of the investigators, where they try to increase their profits, or it can simply be an accident. Now, this is where they just take individuals which aren't representative of the whole in order to make their results either look better or simply because it was an accident. Now, a second type of error is the random error, and random errors are very much like unintentional sample bias, where you accidentally pick two, like say these flowers, you pick two that aren't representative of the whole species, you have two very small ones, and basically these aren't representative of the whole. Now, a very easy way to counter chance is simply to take a larger sample size, and this reduces the bias simply because there's a lower probability of you picking a population that members of the population that aren't representative of the whole. Now, in order to counter sample bias, you can use random sampling, and an example of this is to take an area of land, say you were measuring lengths, stem sizes of plants, and you split the land into a grid, even size squares, and you assign a number to each of these squares. So this one's number 1, this is number 2, etc, etc. And then you use some form of computer to randomly generate a number. And from this number you just use the coordinates that are given, and therefore you're given a random square. And this helps to reduce the size because you have no power over which squares come up, and thus it's completely random. Now, moving on to the second part of variation, which is actual causes of it. Now, when you look at the individual different organisms, you can see that they have different levels of variation. Take for example the bacteria. The bacteria has a very poor variation simply due to the fact that it reproduces asexually, and therefore all of its offspring are genetically identical. And due to this, they have exactly the same genes as their parent. The only way variation can occur in bacterium is if they mutate randomly to form a new gene. And normally this isn't very beneficial, it can cause deformities, but occasionally this can be beneficial for the species, and thus they pass the gene on, and then it becomes a new strain of the virus or bacteria. Now, animals on the other hand have very high variation. One of the primary causes of this is meiosis, and meiosis is the specific cell division in gametes. And due to crossing over, say if we had this chromatid could swap with this one, and then you'd have a red one here, and you've just crossed over a chromatid, and it's got different genetic variation. Additionally, the chromosomes can be differently arranged, so you can have a red one and a yellow one here, you can have a yellow one and a pink one, and basically you can have all manner of combinations of chromatid, and therefore this leads to more random diversity and thus more variation. Furthermore, you have the fusion of gametes. So take here you have the sperm cell and the egg cell, and due to the number of combinations you can have the yellow chromatid or the red chromatids, and any of these can combine, and bearing in mind you have absolutely millions of sperm rushing towards this egg, and therefore you end up with a countless combination that are possible, and therefore you have even more variation due to the random fusion of gametes. So the three things you need to remember are mutation, where random genes just change of their own accord. You've got meiosis, which happens in gametes and randomly mixes up the DNA, and you've also got the fusion of gametes. You've also got environmental factors which can also cause variations, such as sunlight for plants or amount of space, for example, and these can have a bearing on the height or any other physical characteristics. And that's pretty much all there is to know about variations, so thank you very much for listening. Comment, mention how we can improve, and I'm very sorry for stammering.